That his birthday despondency is related somehow to the curriculum and temper of his mind is suggested by the opening pages of the same story, which indicate also that his therapy is to be of the hair of the dog variety. In a sense, I'm Jacob Horner. It was on the advice of the doctor that I entered the teaching profession. For a time, I was a teacher of grammar at the Wicomico State Teachers College. The doctor had brought me to a certain point in my original schedule of therapy, as this was in June 1953, and then once when I drove down from Baltimore for my quarterly checkup at the remobilization farm, which at that time was near Wicomico, he said to me, "Jacob Horner, you mustn't sit idle any longer. You will have to begin work." "I'm not idle all the time," said I take different jobs. We were seated in the progress and advice room of the farmhouse. There is one exactly like it in the present establishment in Pennsylvania. It is a medium-sized room, about as large as an apartment living room, only high-ceilinged. The walls are flat white, the windows covered by white Venetian blinds, usually closed, and a globed ceiling fixture provides the light. In this room there are two straight-backed white wooden chairs exactly alike facing each other in the center of the floor, and no other furniture. The chairs are very close together, so close that the advisee almost touches knees with the advisor. It is impossible to be at ease in the progress and advice room. The doctor sits facing you, his legs slightly spread, his hands on his knees, and leans a little toward you. You would not slouch down, because to do so would thrust your knees virtually against his. Neither would you be inclined to cross your legs in either the masculine or the feminine manner. The masculine manner, with your left ankle resting on your right knee, would cause your left shoe to rub against the doctor's left trouser leg up by his knee and possibly dirty his white trousers. The feminine manner, with your left knee crooked over your right knee, would thrust the toe of your shoe against the same trouser leg lower down on his shin. To sit sideways, of course, would be unthinkable, and spreading your knees in the manner of the doctor makes you acutely conscious of aping his position as if you hadn't a personality of your own. Your position, then, which has the appearance of choice because you're not ordered to sit thus, but which is chosen in a very limited sense since there are no alternatives, is as follows. You sit rather rigidly in your white chair, your back and thighs describing the same right angle described by the structure of the chair, and keep your legs together, your thighs and lower legs describing another right angle. The placing of your arms is a separate problem, interesting in its own right and in a way even more complicated, but of lesser importance since no matter where you put them, they won't normally come into contact with the doctor. You may do anything you like with them. You wouldn't clearly put them on your knees in imitation of him. As a rule, I move mine about a good bit, leaving them in one position for a while, then moving them to another, arms folded akimbo or dangling, hands grasping the seat edges or thighs, or clasped behind the head or resting in the lap. These and their numerous degrees and variations are all in their own ways satisfactory positions for the arms and hands. And if I shift from one to another, this shifting is really not so much a manifestation of embarrassment, or hasn't been since the first half dozen interviews, as a recognition of the fact that when one is faced with such a multitude of desirable choices, no one seems satisfactory for long by comparison with the aggregate desirability of all the rest, though compared to any one of the others it would not be found to be inferior. It seems to me at just this moment, I'm writing this at 7:55 in the evening of Tuesday, October 4, 1955, upstairs in the dormitory, that should you choose to consider that statement as a metaphor, it is the story of my life in a sentence, to be precise, and the latter member of a double predicate nominative expression in the second independent clause of a compound sentence. You see that I was in truth a grammar teacher. It is not fit that you should be at your ease in the progress and advice room, for it's not for relaxation that you come there, but for advice. Were you totally at your ease, you'd be inclined to consider the doctor's words in a leisurely manner, as one might regard the breakfast brought to one's bed by a servant, hypercritically selecting this, rejecting that, eating only what one chooses, and clearly such a frame of mind would be out of place in the progress and advice room, for there it's you who've placed yourself in the doctor's hands. Your wishes are subservient to his, not vice versa, and his advice is given you not to be questioned or even examined. To question is impertinent, to examine pointless, but to be followed. That isn't satisfactory, the doctor said, referring to my current practice of working only when I needed cash and then in any job that presented itself. Not any longer. He paused and studied me, as is his habit, rolling his cigar from one side of his mouth to the other and back again under his pink tongue. You'll have to begin work at a more meaningful job now, a career, you know, a calling, a life work. Yes, sir. You are 30. Yes, sir. And you have taken an undergraduate degree somewhere in history, literature, economics, arts and sciences. That's everything. No major, sir. Arts and sciences. What under heaven that's interesting isn't even either an art or a science? Did you study philosophy? Yes. Psychology? Yes. Political science? Yes. Wait a minute. Zoology? Yes. And philology, romance philology, and cultural anthropology? Later, sir, in the graduate school, you remember the doctor said, as if hawking to spit on the graduate school. Did you study lock-picking in the graduate school, fornication, sail-making, cross-examination? No, sir. Aren't these arts and sciences? My master's degree was to be in English, sir. Damn you, English what? Navigation, colonial policy, common law. English literature, sir, but I didn't finish. I passed the oral examinations, but I never got my thesis done. Jacob Horner, you are a fool. My legs remained directly in front of me as before, but I moved my hands from behind my head, which position suggests a rather too casual attitude for many sorts of situations anyway, to a combination position, my left hand grasping my left coat lapel, my right lying palm up, fingers loosely curled near the midpoint of my right thigh. After a while, the doctor said, "What reason do you think you have for not applying for a job at the Little Teachers College here in Wicomico?" Instantly, a host of arguments against applying for a job at the Wicomico State Teachers College presented themselves for my use, and as instantly a corresponding number of refutations lined up opposite them, one for one, so that the question of my application was held static like the rope marker in a tug-of-war where the opposing teams are equally matched. This again is, in a sense, the story of my life, nor does it really matter if it's not just the same story as that of a few paragraphs ago. As I began to learn not long after this interview, when the schedule of therapies reached mythotherapy, the same life lends itself to any number of stories, parallel, concentric, mutually habitant, or what you will. Well, no reason, sir, I said. Then it's settled. Apply at once for the fall term. And what'll you teach? Iconography? Automotive mechanics? English literature, I guess. No, there must be a rigid discipline, or else it'll be merely an occupation, not an occupational therapy. There must be a body of laws. You mean you can't teach plain geometry? Oh, I suppose. I made a suppositive gesture which consisted of a slight outward motion of my lapel-grasping left hand, extending simultaneously the fore and index fingers, but not releasing my lapel, the hand motion accompanied by quickly arched and as quickly released eyebrows, momentarily pursed lips, and on the one hand, on the other hand, rocking of the head. Nonsense, of course you can't. Tell them you'll teach grammar, English grammar. But you know, doctor, I ventured, there's descriptive as well as prescriptive grammar. I mean, you mentioned a fixed body of rules. You will teach prescriptive grammar. Yes, sir. No description at all, no optional situations. Teach the rules, teach the truth about grammar. The advising was at an end. The doctor stood up quickly. I jerked my legs out of his way and left the room, and after I'd paid the receptionist nurse, I returned to Baltimore. That night I composed a letter to the president of the Wicomico State Teachers College requesting an interview and indicating my desire to join the staff as an instructor in the prescriptive grammar of the English language. There is an art that my diffuse education had schooled me in perforce, the art of composing a telling letter of application. I was asked to appear for an interview in July. He does, and his subsequent career in the academy is less than exemplary, though not without cautionary value.